I'm Justin Woltering.
This is Jason Ellis.
My name is Tyler Matrix.
My name is Chaz Dowdell, and I enter the Flex Zone.
Entering the Flex Zone this week, I'll be interviewing a man that believes personality goes a long way in building meaningful relationships in the workplace and beyond. My guest is the CEO of Solar Inc., former play-by-play radio voice for Furman University, public speaker, and host of the Rapport Advantage podcast, Alex Swire-Clark. You have entered the Flex Zone. How you doing today, Alex?
Do I have to flex publicly while we're doing the podcast? Do I have to do groan or stretch or something?
Alex, on your show, man, I love all the sound effects and the craziness that goes on. You're going to have to flex this whole show, this whole interview. I want you to strike a pose on every question.
Dude, I'm game. Let's get this done.
On Enter the Flex Zone, the Flex Zone fanatics, we take everybody back in time. We like to talk about what you were like growing up as a kid. Because, being a kid, that was one of my fondest memories. I had a lot of fun. It was a lot of good times. And I want to know where it all began for you.
Well, that's a good question, Brad. And for me, I kind of go back to the junior high school days. And I was the shortest kid in my school until I was a senior. And so that posed a lot of problems with trying to get the ladies because they all thought you were cute and adorable. You know what they do with cute and adorable things in their lives at that point in time? You're like a teddy bear. And they say, oh, he's so cute. But then they throw you on the floor. And then you don't have anything to do with
Now,
them.
Wait a minute. You weren't like Gary Coleman short or Webster short. I mean, how short were you?
Well, I wasn't Gary Coleman short, but I was pretty darn close. But yes, it didn't help when my brother, who's 2 years older than I, was about 6'2". And of course, all the girls wanted to have his phone number. So I'd walk around, with a Post-it note on my head and say, just sign this up and just put your name and your number and stick it on my backpack and I'll make sure it gets to Trey. So yeah, So I had some personal confidence issues back then. But one thing I could do, Brad, was I could make people laugh. And that was kind of my defense mechanism. So I would go into classrooms and I would be the guy who would organize the book drop, for when the substitute was there. And I was the guy who would make fun of whatever the subject of the day was. I was the guy who, when the jazz artist came, back when you had school assemblies, the jazz artist came and was pulling people from the crowd. I was the guy who would scat in an instant and then everybody stood on their feet going, that was awesome. And I actually took the mic, went out onto the gym floor and was walking around scatting. So that being a nutshell.
And making people laugh. I remember doing the same thing because I was like 5'7.5", so I wasn't really a tall guy either. But I would always like to have joking time and have a good time, make the girls laugh. But did you ever get in trouble doing this? Because I know I did quite a bit.
Well, from time to time I did, but I didn't get in trouble from that per se as much as it was my wanting to be right in certain situations and going too far, stepping over the lines. I had a teacher in ninth grade, Miss Gray, in physical science, and she and I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And so I had a project that was due. She said I didn't turn it in. I did. And so we had some going back and forth with that. And I just basically, to paraphrase, said, you're flat out wrong. And she didn't like that. Of course, I happened to be president of the National Junior Honor Society at the time.
Right.
And both of my parents worked in the school system. So my mom was working there at the school at the time. So needless to say, that was not a great conversation I had with the principal that day. And because of that, I had some discipline issues that had to follow from that as a consequence. And I was removed from the Honor Society. And so the first guy, I think, and maybe since or ever at that school who was removed from office.
Yeah, like the one and only.
That was not the way I want to be going down in the historical annals at Anderson Junior High School. Yeah. But that's the way it was. And so you make decisions, and sometimes you, as Andrew Shepard said in The American President, you fight the fights that need fighting. I guess it was actually Martin Sheen who said that. And so that was not a fight that I needed to fight. I just needed to close my mouth. But I've struggled with that pretty much most of my life in terms of an outgoing personality. Sometimes you go a little too far in a funny way, or when you're really passionate about something, or you're defending a cause or a person that you feel has been wronged. But that's kind of who I am.
But everything leads you to a lesson learned. And, hopefully you've learned a lesson through that whole experience. But you touched on it earlier. You say you have a passion for athletics. Was this always the case for you? You talked about your short stature. And what was your favorite sport growing up?
It's one of those things where when you're the short kid, there aren't a lot of sports in the mainstream back in the day. The mainstream when you and I were growing up were baseball, basketball, football, the big three. And so, if you were a stud at the school, you played one, if not all three of those. Well, that wasn't going to be in the cards for me. So I chose to do other things. And so as far back as I can remember, I was a golfer because you didn't need to be a big guy to swing a club back then.
Yeah.
And so We had this tiny little golf course in my hometown, and my parents would drop me off in the summer, about 8 o'clock, and I'd meet a bunch of my friends out there. We'd go play 7 holes, and the 8th tee was right behind the pool. So we'd all play 7 holes, go out, change into our swimsuits, swim until the lifeguard said, blow the whistle for break.
Yeah.
And we'd hop back out. We'd play 8 through 12, and then 13 tee was right behind 7 tee. So we'd play through 12, then played 7 again and run back to the pool. And we do that pretty much all day, every day. So I'd play 36 to 54 holes pretty much every day during the summer, nonstop, because that was really the only thing to do in my tiny little rural town. We had one high school in the whole county, so it was pretty rural.
Did you take it anywhere? Did you take it to college, golfing?
No, didn't take it to college. Got involved with other interests. Became really involved in music. French horn is what I played through high school as a part of marching band and concert band and that kind of thing. That took time away. And then I played tennis in high school all 4 years. So I played on the golf team. Actually, I played tennis 3 years, freshman through junior, and then I played golf as a senior, picking it back up. But I didn't take it anywhere past that. But I always had a love for Tar Heel football. I'm a UNC graduate.
Yeah.
And so I used to listen to Woody Durham all the time. God rest his soul, he passed away recently. He was a huge, huge influence on my life from a broadcasting perspective and things like that. So when other kids were driving up and down the road listening to Journey or whatever else was on the car in the 1980s, I am listening to Woody Durham highlight tapes. From broadcasts of football and basketball, honing my craft. And so I would come home and I would sit in front of the TV and, I'd say, 2 wideouts to the left side, 1 to the right, kids in the shotgun, and I'm running through a play-by-play scenario and did that over and over. And so that kind of transitioned, again, my dreams to play football, on a high school or college level. I broke my femur when I was in the 4th grade, so that could have had something to do with stunting my growth a little bit.
Yeah.
So I kind of transferred that dream over into a broadcast scenario.
We're a lot alike in those areas because I remember I was a big pro wrestling fan, still am to some degree, and I remember Gordon Soley. He was one of the best play-by-play guys in pro wrestling, and I'd have my action figures out on the staircase just calling a match. I get where you're coming from. It's just in a different sport. And we talked about making people laugh, and you say you're the self-described responsive humorist. Why don't you explain to the Flex Zone fanatics out there?
Yeah, well, a lot of people can do stand-up. A lot of people can tell a joke and that kind of thing. My role in terms of my humor has never been, so did you hear the one about the guy and, whatever?
Yeah.
I've never done that. But what I do is when someone says something, I will come up with some witty retort that's not offensive or whatever, but that makes everyone around the room laugh. So a pun or something that is going to be humorous from the standpoint of, let's say, someone said, went to Hardee's the other day and got a couple of sausage biscuits and it was $2.50 and I sat down and ate them with my kid. I have 5 kids, so I wouldn't even gotten a crumb.
Yeah, right.
Something like that. So that's a bad example off the cuff, but that's the kind of thing that I'm known for. So when I'm on the stage, I let slides and other music and things like that as a part of my presentation set the stage, and then I'll come back and I'll have a witty remark about that, like, oh, dude, you want to be like that guy? Man, he looks like he's on crack. I'm not sure what's going on there, but that's kind of sketchy.
Crack
is
that
whack.
Kind
of thing. Yeah, exactly.
I was going to ask you, too, being a humorist that you are, and sometimes I like to tell a joke or make somebody laugh just to make myself feel comfortable. In a situation, maybe I'm meeting new people or, like you said, doing a presentation. You get people comfortable in their seats, you start to become comfortable.
That's right. And again, as I said a minute ago, it's kind of a defense mechanism for me going all the way back to when I was a kid. So if I can make someone smile or laugh, I knew that would just basically kill all the tension involved in any avenue that you would be in. Case in point would be, as I was applying for colleges, I was going to be a teacher. And so I applied for in North Carolina and South Carolina, too. They have what's called the Teaching Fellows Scholarship. So back then in the early 90s, that was basically a full ride. It was $5,000 a year. And so if you can imagine that tuition, room, and board at a college, public university in North Carolina was around $5,000 a year. That's the way it was. And so I got past my local interview, got to the district interview, which was going to allow me to either receive a scholarship or not. And the folks were in the room, and I saw the 4 people that were going to be interviewing me that day. And one of the guys was from the University of Virginia. On his bio, it said, blah, 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 graduated from University of Virginia, that kind of thing. And so they asked me a question, and I answered it. And then I said, well, I've got one for you if you guys don't mind. And so I asked them a question, and they responded. And then I said, oh, Mr. Smith, I said, oh, I see on your tag there, you're from the University of Virginia. I hate to hear that, man. And so, I mean, again, that's a card that you play, and it's either going to be a home run or it's going to be an epic fail. And so, exactly. And so he started chuckling and laughing and said, yeah, somebody's got to pay for the school up there. And then everybody else started laughing on the panel. And from then, I had him in the palm of my hand.
Right.
And so the interview went great. I got the scholarship and the rest is history. So those are the kind of situations where if you use humor to reduce tension, it works in pretty much every situation. When you're dealing with folks who are ill, if you can kind of make them laugh a little bit and make them feel better about their day, that's a rewarding feeling for me.
I've talked to a lot of people and we've interviewed about how the world is so negative these days. And yeah, the laughter makes you feel good, makes you feel young if you're old, and it just helps you continue on with life. And you touched on college. And now I know you called play-by-play for Furman University's women's basketball team. How did that all transpire?
That's another interesting road. As we said earlier, always been involved with wanting to do play-by-play work and moved down here to the Clemson, South Carolina area after I graduated from Chapel Hill. And I reached out to Mick Mixon, who was the color analyst for the Tar Heel Sports Network during that time before he became the play-by-play guy for the Panthers.
Okay.
And so he and I had several conversations, and the gist of those was, Mick, love what you do, want to do what you do. How do I get involved? And he said, find a local radio station. Do whatever it takes to get in the door. I don't care if you have to sweep floors, take out the trash, go babysit the dogs, climb up the radio tower and scrape off the antennas. What do you have to do? Just get your foot in the door, and then that will let them see you, know you, and then you can start going from there. And that's what I did. I went and approached the folks down at WCCP 104.9, which is now 105.5, but 104.9 FM in Clemson.
Yeah.
And I said, love to be a part of the broadcast, do something. And they said, well, we don't have anything for you during the day, but what about on our Friday football show? And I said, well, perfect. So what I started doing there was stats, no on-air, anything at all. And I would just keep stats.
Right.
And then the second year I was keep stats and got on the air just a little bit. And then from there, I spoke to Chuck Hushin, who was the voice of the Furman Paladins football staff at that time, and reached out to him, did an interview with him, and then started doing some stat work and some spotting for the Furman football broadcast, and did that for a couple years, and then parlayed that into doing some of the highlight packages for them, which is on-air work. And then I would come in and do some work with Furman's women's basketball team. So did some color at first and then started doing some play-by-play for them. And that was a blast. And I probably had 5 or 6 listeners at the most.
Who cares,
there,
right? It's practice.
Because the team wasn't doing great at the time, but it was just a thrill to be there in the chair doing what I loved. And,
exactly.
And so
love what you do. And that's what they told you. Love what you do. It's very important in life. A lot of people don't love what they do and they say, well, it is what it is. And I guess that's my life. But your life changed in 2003. When did you realize the time to take action and change your life was 2003?
Well, I have a friend who's a physician in Columbus, North Carolina, and he and I have been friends forever. He graduated in the same high school class as my brother did, and I think that he and I were probably a little closer than he and my brother Trey were. We used to work together. We cut grass together. We would mop the floors of the hallways of the school at nighttime, and then you come behind with the electric buffer. You know, it's really loud. And we sneak up on each other, and one of us would be buffering and go, ah! And we'd scream, and and the buffer's flying down the hall, by itself, like, go grab the buffer.
No.
And so we did that when we were in high school, and then we kind of kept that connection throughout our lives. He went to state, NC State. I went to Chapel Hill, of course. And then I was in the classroom. I had been teaching for 8 years, and he had called me, and we had talked a couple of different times about doing something together. Didn't know what, because he's kind of a serial entrepreneur.
Right.
And he basically reached out and said, hey, my practices need some help. Would love to have you down here and help me get that stabilized. And then I've got a few other projects I think you'd be great at. And I said, hey, man, I don't know anything about medical billing or running an office or a practice. I mean, I'm a teacher. It's what I do. He said, well, you got 2 things going for you. Number 1, I like you. I trust you. We've known each other for years. Number 2, you got good common sense. You went to Chapel Hill. I mean, that all together has to be worth something. I said, well, you put it that way. It sounds pretty good.
Right. Thank you.
So you have a conversation with your wife at the time, and who's still my wife, I say at the time. But at that time, you have a conversation with your wife and say, is this something we want to pursue? And we sat down, thought about it, prayed about it, and we made that move and had some rocky points in it, of course, but haven't looked back, and we've been doing it now for 13 years.
It seems like a lot of people that are on air, or there's people that are really good entertainers or make people laugh, they really suffer when it comes to the business aspect of marketing themselves, promoting themselves, making money in their field that they love. Now, you said you didn't have any business knowledge going into this. Where did you find the resources to improve your business knowledge and to make your life better?
Mentors.
Yes,
it's all
definitely
about mentors, Brad. You can Google everything and you can look up things online in their classes. I took classes on how to do Excel and those kind of things, but really finding in the local community, being humble and just going out there and saying, hello, let's just say Bob, I am new to this field. And a friend of mine recommended me to you. Would you be available for some cups of coffee so I could just kind of pick your brain? And that kind of thing. And most of the time, those folks are going to be more than willing to offer you a little bit of their time and expertise in those areas. And so I just sought out as many of those people as I could. And from there, I would take and build upon that and start building a network and things like that. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. But it starts out with humility and being able to say to yourself, it's okay that I don't understand these things.
Right.
But there are other people that do. And, don't be afraid to seek out counsel.
Did you look into the Chamber of Commerce in your area at all?
Yes, I've done that recently with some of my speaking stuff. I didn't do that with this particular avenue because the Chamber of Commerce was about 4 counties away from where my home was.
Yeah, that'd be useless.
I can't build networks there. Hey, you want to meet for coffee? Well, I can't because I'm whatever. But so locally here, yes, in the Greenville-Spartanburg market for sure.
Since becoming the CEO of Solar Inc., what have you learned in that process?
I've learned that your most valuable asset is your people. If you treat them well and give them the tools they need to do what they do, they will remain loyal to you. And it's all about, as Jim Collins would say, putting the right people in the right seats on the bus.
Right.
And we do that through personality assessments. We do that through a 3-step interview process. We do that with cover letters that are specifically designed to have folks communicate well and test that. And then also, where are their core values? If someone is just here for the money or just here to earn a paycheck or to be able to work remotely like all of our team members do, then you might not be the best fit for us.
Right.
We're very open in terms of what we think about from a faith standpoint. We will pray before meetings. We take prayer requests from our team members. That's an important part of who we are as a company. We don't exclude anybody, obviously, because we're equal opportunity, but folks know that pretty early on as to what we're all about from that regard. So if you're open and true about who you are, you don't have to work to pretend to be something you're not. And so as a company, from a culture standpoint, we talked about our core values earlier, those teamwork, integrity, taking the next step and putting our clients first. If we do those things every day, we'll be successful as a company. And that's kind of what we've learned as we've gone along the way.
Endurance, energy, strength, and focus is what I need. Hocus pocus. Yes, my dear sister. Flex Zone Preflex contains caffeine anhydrous, taurine, and L-norberline, to name a few, that helps us soar through the air with ease on our brooms. This witch's brew is for our taste buds only. If anyone else wants a taste, they need to head to Flex Zone Subs and place their order today. And don't forget to enter promo code STORM15 to get 15% off your purchase.
Green apple and blueberries are yummy to my tummy.
I'm Stephanie Sirocco. I'm the owner of SK Fit Life, Broken Skull Challenge competitor, and I have entered the Flex Zone.
Why do so many companies micromanage their people?
Because they're afraid that they haven't gotten the right people in the roles, I think. And that goes back to questioning, what are your hiring practices?
Right.
So many people will have in fact, we've had employees that have left our company to go work for somebody sight unseen. So basically, they would have had the other company that's called Brand X would see one of our team members' resumes. Oh, that looks good. When can you come in for a quick chat? And they'll have a 20-minute phone call with them, look at their CV and say, yeah, we're going to hire you. Can you start tomorrow? What kind of process is that? I mean,
Bam!
That's just waiting to get slapped around, failed. And then they're going to try and seek out unemployment for unfair practices so it's just really, really bizarre. So we really slow down and take our time. We try to hire when we don't need to. So we've always got good people in the system. So when we are growing, we can absorb that growth. But I think it goes back to Brad, folks not trusting their own process. And you've got folks who are put in positions where they're not capable of handling it from a personal standpoint. What I mean by that is there's a totally different mindset and a skill set that you need from building the widget to teaching someone else how to build the widget. So from that perspective, I might have someone who is the best claims builder on the planet, but I don't want them training my other staff to do what they do because they might be, let's say, a little bit prickly. Mm-hmm. They might have their own idea about how the process works, but they can't convey that and communicate that to our team. And a lot of people don't want that responsibility because then once you start teaching people how to build the widgets, then you have to start managing that widget building process. So many times we have rock stars and we're so interested in promoting them to the next level up, we forget about what skill set does it take to make them successful there. as they were in the position that they just left.
And like you said earlier, it's all about putting people where they'll thrive. And that's what it sounds like to me, that you're putting people where they're going to succeed. And it's pretty scary government work. I've worked for the fire department in the past, and there's so much micromanagement going on. Kind of makes you sick sometimes, because there are people out there that can do the job without being told what to do. You need to be able to do that job without being told what to do. There's a life on the line, so it blows my mind. What has been the most challenging thing for you as a public speaker?
For me as a public speaker, I think it's just breaking into the arena itself, because there's so many people out there that do it. Not everyone does it as well as others. I mean, you probably have seen that firsthand.
Right.
So trying to get established and do it the right way so that you can scale your business when it gets a little bit bigger. I think that a lot of speakers will go in as a one-man shop, and then they'll build their processes and their systems based around their current circle, which is pretty close to them. And they don't really understand that, okay, let's say I start doing $20,000 worth of business in this quarter. Oh, that's great. Well, who's taking care of booking all the travel for you? Who's taking care of your website, putting out all your promotional material, that kind of thing? So you've got to be able to expand past yourselves. But that takes time in the early process. So for me, it's been just kind of getting started, laying the foundation. Again, I have a mentor, Jane Atkinson is my speech coach. Love Jane to death. And she's kind of put me on the path to being able to see that, kind of begin with the end in mind, to use a Coveyism there, and see, okay, what is my speaking business going to look like at the end of this year, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and start building processes and platforms and making connections accordingly.
We're going to talk about your podcast now. We're going to change gears a little bit. And the podcast has definitely been moving upward and onward. What have been some of the hurdles you've experienced along the way with the Rapport Advantage?
Well, at the Rapport Advantage, we have the material and we have good content. And just like with anything else, you're thinking to yourself, okay, how do I get started with this?
Yeah.
You know, what web hosting service do I use? And so everyone's got an opinion out there for that. What kind of equipment do I need to use? Do I need to go out and get a Rode Procaster, or can I just start off with an Audio-Technica 2100, or what, whatever those kind of things are? And so once you've got that, then you have to say, okay, how am I going to format it? Is it going to be just me? Is it going to be me with another person? Is it going to be content driven? Or are we going to be interview based? So there's so many different ways that you can do podcasts. So trying to figure out what that was going to look like. And then who's my target audience? So before you ever touch the dials and start recording, who am I trying to reach? And so for me, that was pretty easy to get to. We talk about transforming the way leaders communicate, and there are leaders pretty much everywhere. You can be a leader in an industry. You can be a leader in your company. You can be a leader in a church. You can be a leader in any kind of organization. You can be a leader in your home. So we target typically CEOs, sales leaders, project managers, those folks who are constantly relying on others to interact with people from a project standpoint, from a sales standpoint. And from that perspective, we try to get people to understand that building relationships shouldn't be accidental. It should be intentional.
What has been the most exciting thing about your podcast so far? How many episodes you're on now? Was it 15?
Yeah, 15. That's right, 15. It's just been a blast. The most exciting thing for me has just been going and, checking my statistics and having people actually listening. And we're certainly not 10,000 downloads a day. We're not there. But I would love to be there. But as we have, as I have said before many, many times, listen to other people, get some mentors. And one of the ones that I listen to through a podcast is Dave Jackson, and he does the School of Podcasting. And he's always talking about the fact that it takes about 2.5 to 3 years to really build an audience if you're doing it right. And of course, there's the top 2% that just already have a built-in audience. Let's say, like, if Tony Robbins started a podcast today, of course, already got, but if he started one today, bam, he's going to have thousands and thousands of people. Tim Ferriss, bam, thousands and thousands of people. Dave Ramsey, those people who already have a following, they start a podcast, then it just becomes quite simple for them to have those numbers. But for someone who just speaks publicly, and I have a network, but I don't have folks who are out there hanging on my every breath with my seventh book.
Yeah, right.
Then it's a little bit difficult to do that. So we've been inching up every week. So it's been good. And the feedback has been good as well. So it's been a blessing. And
join groups. There are a lot of Facebook groups that have interest in podcasts. There's a lot of podcasters out there. And what I found was joining all these groups on LinkedIn and Facebook have really helped me out. And I'm not really afraid to ask a stupid question because
that's right. You just got to, because there is no stupid question except if you've already asked that question, you didn't remember what you said the first time. And
right.
To say, hey, dude, we just explained that to you. Oh, you're right. My bad.
Yeah, they make you feel a little bit idiotic, but hey, it's like you need to be on top of your game. That's the way it is. As far as social media is concerned, what have been the trials and tribulations for you as far as the learning process there, and which one do you like the most?
Well, I like the interaction with Twitter. just because it's pretty easy to load things up. You can schedule tweets. I'm more of a one-to-one tweet kind of person. I schedule some things, but I like to be personal. I mean, you and I have interacted out there in Twitterverse, and we like to be kind of reactionary to what's going on and be personal in terms of our responses. I see people out there all the day who are just spitting out content every 10 minutes.
Words of wisdom.
And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking at your likes down there and nobody's hitting it because it's the same thing over and over. You've got your 40 pieces of content with your nice, pretty graphic, and then it just gets on a rotational basis. And so if you don't add personal touch to it, or, you're not listening to what your audience is asking for, then you're going to be up a creek. I like LinkedIn as well, just because I can add things in between the podcast. I posted something earlier this week that I discovered on YouTube about Adam West's 1966 version Batman and Batman's words of wisdom. And of course, some of it's cheesy, like you must always look both ways, Robin. But some of it's really good about music and using languages to overcome adversity and the barriers that we face between countries and things like that. So some of it was cheesy, but some of it was really, really applicable to what we talk about on the show. So those are my two. And in terms of the adversity I face with those is just wanting everything to be perfect, and wanting it to be polished and professional. When you're out there on Twitter, you can be a little more personable, but when you're LinkedIn and you've got a brand, you want to make sure that you're doing everything to make the brand as nice and neat and polished as you can make it. So I would tell people, just don't be afraid to jump out there and add content that's going to be meaningful, that's going to change people's lives, because if you don't, then you're kind of being selfish with the information that you have.
Yeah, and the thing is, I got this webcam that I set up just recently, and I've been doing these preview videos, which it took me a while to get comfortable back being in front of the camera again. But I was just like, if I don't do this stuff, even if nobody watches it, I got to put content out there. I got to get used to being in front of the camera, being comfortable, and getting my message out there as well. I mean, I might not be perfect. Nobody is really, but you got to work at it. It just doesn't happen overnight. I think you've noticed that on the podcasting groups. So some people are like, I'm just frustrated. I've been doing this for a month.
Exactly. It's like, I've been doing this for 6 weeks and I've got 12 downloads.
And then you got people that go, I've been doing it for 2 weeks and I got 1,000 downloads. And that's a high peak to go from the get-go to keep on continuing that way, but more power to you. What would you like people to know that haven't listened to your podcast, that are tuning into Enter the Flex Zone, to know about your show, to tune in?
Well, we're in the business section in iTunes because you kind of have to choose one. And so that's where we market to. But we have a lot of personal development in there as well, and some self-awareness. And so we try to let folks understand that we are attracted to our opposites most times. And so from a personality perspective, I married my complete opposite with my wife. So that generates a lot of struggles, because the bottom line is that not everybody thinks like you do, and not everybody communicates like you do. And so my wife communicates with me in a total opposite way than the way I would communicate back with her, without understanding this knowledge about personality styles. It actually saved our marriage. Back in 1997, we were married in 95. In 97, we were kind of having some marital arguments, more than you would think you should be having at 2 years, because you're still kind of honeymoonish at that point in time. Yeah. And so she would be like, well, why can't you get everything on the grocery list? When I give you 10 items, you come on with 9. And I was like, well, why can't you be more spontaneous? And she said, well, why can't you stay organized? And I would be like, well, why can't you just live a little bit and laugh a little bit? And that's because, again, if you listen to the show, you'll know that I'm an IS type, which means I'm an influence. I'm an outgoing, people-oriented person. And she's a CD, which means that she's doubly task-oriented. She's more of a quiet, process, intellectual person. And so we were just butting heads the whole time, because why don't you think like me? I was like, why don't you think like me? So our podcast does a good job of explaining what each personality style is all about, and then how to adapt your behavior to that, because it all comes down to, number one, understanding who you are. Because if you can't understand who you are, then the rest of it's just irrelevant. So understand who you are first, then understand others. So understand those other styles, and then being able to adapt your style to meet the needs of others in your family. That doesn't mean changing who you are. That just means that I know that one of my wife's favorite things for me to do with her is to help her organize stuff. Now, I mean, shoot me in the head and give me a root canal at the same time when it comes to stacking IKEA shelving units. But I know that gives her a sense of happiness and comfort to know that stuff is on shelves where she wants it to be, probably alphabetized or colored by the Roy G. Biv chart or whatever it happens to be. But that makes her feel good. And so I can adapt what I'm doing for that afternoon to help her with that, to make her feel good about who she is. And then she knows that I'm going to go to Taco Bell. And when she goes to the drive-thru line, she's going to be driving the car, pulls up, and they say, welcome to Taco Bell. And she'll say, yeah, can I have 2 chicken soft tacos, medium Pepsi, please, and an order of nachos? That's what she's going to have every time. And she's going to look at me and say, okay, what would you like, sweetheart? And my response will be, what's on special today?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I won't want that. Okay, So how about what comes on the burrito, taco, fajita chicken sandwich?
Yeah.
And so my wife is at that point, staring laser beams into my eyeballs, thinking, we've been to Taco Bell 8,000 times. You know what's on the menu. And I'll say, okay, just give me a soft taco. Would that be chicken or beef? And, my wife hits some gas, and we're out there, and so we're going to Subway. She puts up with that, and knowing,
Subway,
she knows
there's more
about me now.
selections to choose from.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, at least at Subway, I'm independent, and I can kind of do my own thing there.
Did you get the egg taco yet?
I have not.
That
But I did try some new steam triple gold burrito the other day, which wasn't terrible. They steamed it, the cheese is melted, so it was actually pretty good. But yeah, so understanding those things and appreciating those things about each other really did save our marriage, and we're going on 23 years this August. So
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So it's pretty amazing what this knowledge can do, both professionally and personally.
All right, we're going to wrap the show up with When It Rains, It Pours question of the show. This is brought to you by FlexZoneSups.com and a promo code STORM15, and you get 15% off your purchase. It's that simple. Live your life so you never look back and say, if only I would have blank. Now, you put, who was the girl you didn't ask to the dance? Now, I remember I wanted to ask this girl to the dance. It was 6th grade. I went up. We had to change classes. We had to walk by each other. And I asked her, and she shot me down. But which girl did you not ask to the dance? Because you wouldn't have just put that there for nothing.
Well, yeah. Well, there was as a 7th grader, we were junior high back then, so it was 7 through 9.
Oh, yeah.
And as a 7th grader, you were introduced to other students from around the county. So when I was in my little town of Wadesboro, we had our little people at our elementary school. But then when we came to the junior high school, there were people from Morven, which is a small town, then Peachland, then Polkton, then Ansonville, and some other little places around the county. Because, again, one high school in the entire county. And so I got to campus, and about 2 days after I was there was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen in my life. And her name was Stephanie Black. And I thought she had hung the moon. She was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I would be stalking her like at lunch period, because we'd all have the same lunchtime because we were in band class. So I'd be walking around trying to just sneak a glimpse and that kind of thing. And so
did Journey play in the back of your mind? Were you like, just a small town
and so
girl?
I was like, oh, please don't pass out on the ground. So, it was sad. So there were several dances that year, and there was no way in God's green earth I was going to go ask her to dance. I mean, she just intimidated the heck out of me. So going back, if I could tell my former self, I would say, look, dude, she might have said yes, probably 95% chance she was going to say no. But if you don't ask, you'll never know. So, they talk about it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. It's better to ask the question than spend the rest of your life thinking, what if? What if I would have taken that ACT one more time?
Yeah.
Could I have gotten that scholarship? What if I would have asked that guy, hey, can I have a part-time job here? That might have led to something else. So I just never wanted to look back on my life and say, what if? Take a chance. I'm not saying take a crazy risk like go bungee jumping without a cord, but, take a chance in life and you'll be able to look back with satisfaction and know that, hey, I got turned down for this, this, and this. I mean, I've written a book and I was turned down by a publishing company, but I wrote the book and I submitted it, and I'll get it published either by self-published or through Amazon at whatever point in time. But I'll never be able to say, well, I was just too scared to submit it. Well, I got that down, check that box.
Right.
So.
Who cares? Because, when I asked the girl and she shot me down, I didn't spend time daydreaming about her anymore or doing anything else. I knew that was case closed. Let's move on. And no more wasted time.
Billions more fish in the sea, my friend.
It's been great having you on the show. Do you got any shout-outs you want to make before I let you go?
There's so many. Just shout out to Mom and Dad. Y'all probably listening because I'll put this up on social media. So thanks for always supporting me and everything I did. But yeah, shout out to my wife and my family. They help me every day to get through all the craziness and insanity of work life and social life. And so they put up with all my insanely bad dad jokes. So thanks to them.
Another one in the books, Flex Zone Fanatics. If you want to follow Alex Swire-Clark on social media, you can do so. Check out his website at www.alexswire-clark.com. On Twitter at Alex Swire-Clark. YouTube, Alex Swire-Clark. His podcast on Facebook at The Rapport Advantage. And on Instagram at Alex Swire-Clark. And go take a look on Instagram at FlexZoneSups and the website FlexZoneSups.com. Enter in promo code STORM15 and you get 15% off your purchase. Have you been experiencing the what-ifs lately? Is there something out there that you've always wanted to do, but you've been either too comfortable or too uneasy to turn the what-if into an I have? Take it from me. I made the jump, and I'm not going to tell you it's easy or that I've had instant success. One thing that I can tell you, though, is that I have no more questions clouding my mind. Whether it succeeds or whether it fails, it's all on me, and I gave it a go regardless of the outcome. Alex Swire-Clark will tell you to find some mentors, be humble, and turn a nervous conversation into a funny one, because no matter how you go about it, the what-ifs will be gone for good. All right, Flex Zone fanatics, you can follow me on social media. I changed everything. It's all under Brad Storm Lanew on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And check out my business, Voices of the Storm Recording, on Facebook. Give it a like and check out the many videos I have on the business page. And Flex Zone fanatics, you can subscribe to Enter the Flex Zone at a variety of places. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and Stitcher. And if you leave us a review on iTunes, I'll pick one out every week and read it live on the show. So if you want to get something off your chest, you want to talk about your business, your entrepreneurship, your plan, whatever you want to do, I'll pick one and read it out loud. And this one comes from HHI Bob. Love the show as the guests present different life stories. The host is very upbeat and always seems to ask the right questions. I want to thank you for that one, HHI Bob. And remember to clench the fist and punch every day in the face. And I'll see you the next time we enter the Flex Zone.